Welcome to the Three Martini Lunch. Grab a stool next to Greg Columbus of Radio America and Jim Garrity of National Review. Three Martinis coming up.
Really glad you're with us for the Tuesday edition of the Three Martini Lunch. Good, bad, crazy martinis for you again today. And Jim, the good news is some House Democrats might actually be prepared to do the responsible thing. We haven't seen it on much so far this year, certainly not on COVID relief and H.R. 1, the other pieces of terrible legislation that are headed to the Senate and we're all chewing our fingernails on as to whether the filibuster will hold or not. But one issue that seems to be drawing at least a little bit of bipartisan effort here is whether or not to kick out the Republican member of Congress from Iowa's 2nd Congressional District. We talked about this race a couple different times last year. Mariannette Miller-Meeks, the Republican, won the race by 6. Yes, 6 votes against Democrat Rita Hart. And you know Rita Hart is a person of high integrity, Jim. When she doesn't challenge the results further in court, no, she appeals it straight to the Democratic majority in the House of Representatives, which does ultimately have the say on who gets seated. Pelosi agreed to seat Miller-Meeks at the time of the swearing-in back in January, but the appeal is playing out now. Politico Playbook reporting, I believe yesterday, a source close to the process confirmed to Playbook that the effort to oust Mariannette Miller-Meeks in favor of Rita Hart has been blessed by the top echelons of House Democratic leadership. Well, that's obviously not good news, but what is good news is that some moderate-ish Democrats are saying, yeah, I don't really like this idea. Some saying not at all. Susan Wild from a swing district in Pennsylvania says, quote, "As I have said before in connection with the 2020 presidential election, legislators should be heeding state certifications of their elections. Unless there is rampant error and substantial evidence thereof, I do not believe it is the role of House members to dictate the outcome of elections." So there is a little bit of wiggle room there. Josh Gottheimer of New Jersey is co-chair of the Bipartisan Problem Solvers Caucus. Tells Politico he has, quote, deep reservations. The strongest statement is coming from Dean Phillips of Minnesota, who said, quote, "Losing a House election by 6 votes is painful for Democrats, but overturning it in the House would be even more painful for America." He's the only Democrat so far to come out against any effort whatsoever to overturn the result. So, Jim, given all the Democrats' response to Republican questions about the presidential race last year, and certainly right as the Senate takes up what the Democrats are calling their effort to save democracy with H.R. 1, which is nationalizing elections at the state level in a lot of different ways. But here they're willing to say, 6 votes, what's the big deal? Let's go ahead and kill it.
Yeah. I mean, the good martini today is that if you've ever looked at Democratic members of the House or Democratic office holders in general and said, come on, even they have to recognize there's a glaring hypocrisy here. Even they have to recognize that what they are doing in this one situation is morally indistinguishable and logically and factually indistinguishable from what they're doing in this other situation that they're denouncing. Clearly, they can't think they can get away with this, and at least a handful of House Democrats have whether they want to say woken up and smelled coffee or the smelling salts have been applied. They now recognize, wait a minute. We've spent every day since Election Day denouncing Donald Trump for not recognizing the results of an election, for not recognizing court decisions, for attempting to overturn an election through sheer force and not respecting the will of the people, not respecting court decisions. And now we're going to do the exact same thing in this House race. What happens when you usually lose a really close House race is you say, darn it, and then your candidate says, okay, well, now I know I just need to do a little bit better than I did last time. The nice thing about losing a race by a little bit is you now say, okay, well, now here's a district. We put in a bunch of money. Clearly, we've got a candidate who came very, very close to winning. And you just got to accept, you take the L and move on, which seems to be this new rallying cry on Twitter these days. If you've ever seen somebody get something wrong, and then they keep backfilling and they keep insisting that, no, they're right. There was this idiotic journalism professor who got into a fight with Ramesh the other day, my colleague Ramesh Panuru, because he posted a picture of a huge crowd at the beach, and it turned out and saying, this is why we're going to, have to shut down schools in the fall. Nobody's on, Florida's out of control. And of course, the picture's from like 2017 or something like that. It was like years ago. It's pre-pandemic. And so Ramesh called him out on it, and he kept saying, well, look, just because that photo wasn't accurate doesn't mean, it's like, just take the loss, accept it. In this case, there are a handful of House Democrats who recognize, look, you've got the House majority. Now you're probably, you're only within 5 or 6 seats of losing it in the 2022 elections. But you look at this district in Iowa and say, you know what, we've got a really good chance of knocking off the Republican incumbent in 2022. And that's what you put all your effort in. If you do this, you undermine everything you're doing. You give Republicans this. I don't think they're going to go ahead with this. I think there are enough House Democrats who are going to say the cost is not worth another seat. Now, by the way, if the election had shaken out 218 to 217, and Republicans had the majority or something like that, then maybe, or Republican Democrats had been in danger of losing at a 218 majority, and were afraid they'd lose control with a vacancy or something, then maybe Democrats would find the risk would be worth it. In this case, it's very clear it is not worth it to the Democrats, and at least some of them can recognize this, and I suspect will save Nancy Pelosi and the rest of the House Democrats from their own worst instincts.
You know what's interesting here, Jim, and first of all, I agree with exactly what you said there. I don't see a lot in this Politico thing about Pelosi or anybody else. I think Zoe Lofgren is chair of the administration panel that will look at this case. I don't see any quotes from any of them saying, oh, the evidence is really compelling here. It's just, yeah, we're going to do this. And so that's not a very good sign. This Politico piece does say that there's 22 ballots in question, which Hart says should be counted, even though they weren't counted in all the wrangling and appeals that went up to the certification deadline. And so if those had been counted, she would have won. And I guess if they go forward with this, that's what they'll hang their hat on. But this is a very rare thing to happen. I believe that the story said 110 times a House race has been appealed to the House of Representatives. Only 3 times has the appeal actually been granted. And so in this political climate, and especially what we just went through with the presidential race, I can't imagine how volcanic this is going to be. But Democrats have proven very able at hypocrisy. Jim, we saw it on the filibuster. And in terms of election integrity, I don't see any reason for them to be expected to stay consistent on that either. They should, but they won't.
Yeah, and keep in mind, this is Iowa. The caucus was a mess last time around, but that's run by the Democratic Party. This was counted. It was recounted. They had all kinds of court battles. Iowa did not just willy-nilly just decide, oh, we think this candidate won. They've had every legitimate opportunity to go through and sort out, okay, do we think this, was there any ballots that were missed or any ballots that were not counted who should have been? There's plenty of reasons to sort this out. There's no reason to believe the wrong winner is here. And, look, we are now in March. The Republican member of Congress has cast a lot of votes here. Coming forward and say, oh, we've just decided as a majority party, you should not do it that way. It's just not going to fly. And I suspect even the Democrats can kind of recognize how bad this would look if they completely undo everything they did after the 2020 election.
At least they declared a winner in this race. With the caucuses, it's been sheer chaos over the past few cycles. The last 2 times the Democrats did the caucuses, we don't really know who won. Could have been Bernie, could have been Buttigieg. Time before that, it was a bunch of coin flips. 2012, Santorum against Mitt. We still don't really know who won. Maybe it was Santorum. He found out about a month later when it did him no good. Anyway, so they actually had a winner this time. So that's good, we think, as long as it stays that way. Jim, speaking of good things, we need to know what we're putting into our bodies. Nutrition is key, and so is what we take in terms of multivitamins. A lot of times, though, you don't know. It could be sugars, GMOs, allergens, synthetic fillers, artificial colorants, but not with Ritual multivitamins. It's clean, vegan-friendly multivitamin is formulated with high-quality nutrients in bioavailable forms that your body can actually use. Plus, the fresh taste and the delayed release capsule makes taking your vitamins easy and actually pleasant. I just got my 3rd bottle of monthly multivitamins from Ritual. It does have a better taste than most multivitamins have. It's got a lot of stuff in there that is going to help to keep you healthy. B12, vitamin D, zinc, always good for the immune system. And so it's not something you have to think a lot about. It's got good stuff in it. They do it the right way. Ritual's a great product.
Now, a multivitamin should contain key nutrients and forms your body can actually use in order to help fill gaps in your diet. No shady extras. And Ritual's delayed release capsule design delivers high quality nutrients, including vitamin D3, in just 2 daily pills. And Ritual is made traceable, which means you always know what nutrients you're taking and where they come from, thanks to Ritual's one-of-a-kind visible supply chain.
So get your key nutrients without the usual garbage. Ritual is offering our listeners 10% off during your first 3 months. Visit ritual.com/martini to start your ritual today. All right, Jim, let's move to our bad martini now. And horrifically, for the second time, and I think less than a week, we've had a major mass shooting. You and I talked about the mass shooter in Atlanta who was suffering from sexual addiction that he was struggling with, obviously, somehow blamed massage parlors for it, attacked 3 of them, killed people at 3 different massage parlors. 6 of the 8 victims were Asian. The media is trying to turn this into a racial issue. And as you pointed out in a recent piece, why he targeted them could have some component to that, but it doesn't seem to be the main factor. But obviously a debate has broken out on that in a number of fronts. And then yesterday in Boulder, Colorado, at a King Soopers grocery store, for motives we still don't know, I don't believe, 10 people gunned down, others injured, shooter taken into custody. So maybe he'll talk and explain what happened here. And so, Jim, you got families devastated in 2 major metropolitan areas here, and people are fearing that as we continue to open up, we're going to be back to the scourge of mass shootings. Hopefully that's not the case. But of course, as has been the pattern now with a lot of these mass shootings, the instant knee-jerk reaction continues. The gun control crowd instantly says that this is why we need tougher and tougher restrictions on access to Second Amendment rights. And other folks are looking for other reasons. Was it mental illness? Was it this? Was it that? We'll find out. It's a case-by-case situation. Obviously, people who resort to these things have reached some sort of mental state where they're clearly not thinking the way we would consider normal. So there's some level of mental problem going on there. But whether it's clinical or not is another question. And so it's horrific to see these continue to happen. And it's maddening that the instant reaction to it means we're likely never going to have a serious conversation, an honest conversation about how to really stop this. Because usually in these situations, changing gun control laws might not have made much of a difference at all.
Yeah. Now, the irony is I had been debating writing something about how we were seeing the conversation in the aftermath of the Georgia massage parlor shootings. Because we saw a lot of people insisting, this was anti-Asian hatred. And this is, because Trump called it the China virus and stuff like that. And that's clearly the FBI director, Christopher Wray, said this did not appear to be, driven by racial hatred. But I also kind of note that, the perpetrator did it. He said he had sex addiction issues. And he said that he was, I'm sure he saw these massage parlors as, temptresses that were trying to make him feel these things. Here's the thing. It's possible that this guy's attitude towards sex are sort of tied into how he views Asian women, and how he views Asian women are tied into what he thinks about sex. But putting even that particular case aside, there's this rush to decide something terrible has happened. It must have happened for the reasons that I dislike the most. And you have this rush to tie it to the political figure who is least liked right now. It could be Trump, the Tucson shooter that they tried to connect to Sarah Palin's Facebook post. After Omar Mateen went through the shooting of the Pulse nightclub, the instant reaction of a lot of folks was, this is anti-gay bigotry. This is because of Republican opposition to gay marriage. And of course, the guy, told police on the 911 call that he was a member of ISIS. So we have this terrible shooting out in Colorado, and there's, instantly you saw people saying, this is another example of white nationalism. This is another example of white supremacist violence. Look, we don't know the motive yet, but I don't think it's quite that simple, because it turns out the shooter's name is Ahmad El-Isa. Now, I was just talking to somebody right before we started taping, Greg. People hear that, first of all, a lot of people go, that's not this is not a case of white supremacist violence, or at least doesn't appear to be. You assume that that's an Arab name. We don't know what the person's religion was. And I think it's kind of interesting that people see that, then a lot of people would say, it must have been jihadist violence. It may have been jihadist violence. We don't know that yet. It may not have been jihadist violence. Arab Americans and Muslim Americans can go out and shoot people for completely secular reasons. And I kind of feel like that's the sort of scenario that nobody really likes to think about too much. Folks on the left don't like to think about it because it disrupts the narrative of Arabs or Muslims being victims of this country that is xenophobic and hateful and intolerant and all that stuff. And people on the right probably don't like to think about that too much, in part because a lot of people on the right are invested in this mentality of vehemently opposing jihadism in all its forms. And it's kind of, wait, the guy's Arab, but he didn't do it in the name. He didn't scream Allah Akbar. He didn't do, what was it? Wait, he's not a member. He didn't pledge loyalty to ISIS or Al Qaeda or anything like that. He's just a routine maniac shooter who just happened to be Arab. Boy, that's a scenario we haven't really thought through in this country. And I kind of get frustrated how quickly something terrible like this happens. And we get tied into these debates of, the motive was X, or no, the motive was Y. And first of all, it doesn't make any difference to the people who've been killed or their families. It doesn't make any difference to the people who've been traumatized by all this. And kind of what was his motive? It's sort of like, well, if we can figure out the motive, we can figure out what the trigger was. And if we can avoid that trigger, then people won't go on shooting sprees. The problem is the kind of people who are inclined to go on shooting sprees. One study of them characterized them as grievance collectors, right? They're looking for an excuse. They're looking for a reason. And all of them have this same mentality of, I have been so wronged that I am justified in going out and killing other people. And the mass shooters have been done so over frustrations in the workplace. They've done so over relationships. They've done so school shooters who complained about bullies. Now, lots of people have frustrations in the workplace. Lots of people have relationship issues. Probably everybody has a relationship issues at one point or another. Lots of people were bullied in school, and they don't necessarily go out and go on a shooting spree. So this idea that, I had no choice, this idea of these bad things happened to me, and thus I was justified to go out and commit mass murder, that's nonsense. But I kind of have this frustrating sense that these arguments about the motive lend credibility to the notion that, there's some motivation out there that's more justifiable than others, or there's some that are less justifiable than others. And let me tell you, nothing's justifiable for going out and trying to shoot lots of people. It's deeply frustrating. A lot of people say, this is why the country needs to talk about its gun problem. Well, okay, it's a gun problem, but Christmas Day, that guy blew up downtown Nashville. Thankfully, he didn't kill anybody other than himself because he was afraid of lizard people. If these guys don't somehow, if we got them to stop using guns and instead they started using bombs, we would not be necessarily in a better situation. They started using knives, we would not necessarily be in a significantly better situation. The problem is people who decide that my act of violence is justified. And I'd really like to figure that out. I think it's a mental health component. I think it's also just this. People need coping skills. People need an ability to get through adversity in life, to not reach this point of utter despondency and rage to the point where they take it out on everyone. It's a complicated problem, Greg, and I feel like every single time it happens, the debate afterwards gets even more simplistic and further from addressing the real issues.
Yes. And of course, as I said at the beginning, people go back to, and we see this not just on guns, Jim, it's basically every issue. We saw it with the pandemic as well, COVID relief and a lot of other areas. Whatever just happened is further proof that we need to do what I wanted to do in the first place. And you get things that sound good, like Senator Bennett from Colorado. I'm sure he's horrified by what happened. Everybody should be. He simply says, enough is enough. Well, okay, we would love to stop that, but what's that going to look like? I mean, other folks on the pro-Second Amendment side are saying, look, King Soopers says you can't bring a gun into the store. Boulder's a very liberal city. Denver is too. I'm guessing they have some gun laws on the books that you and I probably wouldn't agree with. And so would that have actually stopped anything? It's always the next thing that they say would put a stop to these things, and that's just not the case. It's more complicated than people want to admit.
I also get really frustrated by any, argument that gets into the neighborhood, because whenever you're presented with a complicated problem in society, who's responsible for X problem? We're all responsible for X
right.
problem. No, we're not. You know who's responsible? The guy who picked up the gun and started shooting people. That's the guy who's responsible, and there's a certain eagerness to get people you spread around blame, you spread around responsibility, which is another way of making sure that nobody really takes any responsibility.
Exactly right. It all has to fit the pre-existing narrative, and it's just so exhausting, especially when real lives are lost in these situations. All right, well, let's talk about something much happier, and that is the quality and the deals you can get from MyPillow. But MyPillow is a lot more than just great pillows. They give the same attention to their towels and sheets. And right now, 3 Martini Lunch listeners can buy one, get one free on all 6-piece towel sets and the Giza Dream Sheet sets.
MyPillow towels have a proprietary technology that makes those towels highly absorbent. They're soft to the touch without that lotiony feel. They come with a 10-year warranty and a 60-day money-back guarantee. They're washable, they're dryable, and they have 7 colors to choose from.
Just started using the towels this week. I mentioned this yesterday. Really good. Really absorbent, really soft. Love them. The MyPillow Giza Dream sheets, also made with the world's best cotton, making them ultra soft and breathable. The sateen weave gives them a very luxurious finish. Also comes with a 10-year warranty and the 60-day money-back guarantee. Washable and dryable and a wide variety of colors and sizes. Go to MyPillow.com to learn more and to order. Right now, 3 Martini Lunch listeners can get all 6-piece towel sets and Giza sheets. Buy one, get one free. Use the promo code Martini at checkout or call 800-874-0104. That's MyPillow.com, code Martini, or call 800-874 for buy one, get one free on all 6-piece towel sets and Giza Dream Sheets. All right, Jim, we talked about the left and their post-election insanity when it comes to Iowa, too. I guess it's equal time for the right now. Sidney Powell has been sued by Dominion for defamation in terms of what she said Dominion did to alter the vote in key states in last year's presidential elections. She famously vowed to release the kraken of evidence that would prove that the election was rigged by Dominion at numerous levels. Well, Dominion didn't like that. Dominion is suing her for a lot of money. I don't remember the exact total, Jim, but it's more than she has. I can promise you that. So Powell is now asking for the suit to be tossed, but her reason is a bit head-scratching here, Jim. In her statement, it says, determining whether a statement is protected involves a 2-step inquiry. Is the statement one which can be proved true or false? And would reasonable people conclude that the statement is one of fact in light of its phrasing, context, and the circumstances surrounding its publication? Analyzed under these factors, no reasonable person would conclude that the statements were truly statements of fact. Also, the motion to dismiss included a raft of legal precedent supporting the view that political speech lies at the core of First Amendment protection. Quote, additionally, in light of all the circumstances surrounding the statements, their context, and the availability of the facts on which the statements were based, it was clear to reasonable persons that Powell's claims were her opinions and legal theories on a matter of utmost public concern. And so, Jim, I mean, she was talking about Venezuela and military intelligence and all sorts of other things involved with how things were cooked with the Dominion results back in November. So it seems odd for a lawyer to make this argument, but essentially she's saying here, Jim, I can't believe you could sue me for defamation. In fact, you can't do that because, come on, that means you actually believed what I said. That's silly.
Yeah, I mean, when she says no reasonable person could consider that to be a fact, yeah, I agree. That wasn't really her message then, though. Back then, it was, oh, no, it's totally, there was, it's kind of like, I was joking all along. No. When you see people get in really bad trouble, on the internet, they'll say, "Oh, look, it was satire," or it was a joking, and all kind of stuff. This kind of instantaneous, reversed attempt to avoid being, for instance, when they realize they've gotten in trouble, but they don't want to admit that they said something genuinely stupid. It is fascinating. Look, this is not really surprising to anybody who watched it at the time, although I do remember certain readers who were really PO'd at me when I said that there was no Kraken, that there was no overwhelming evidence of vote fraud, that none of these were holding up in court, and that there was, that the metaphorical Kraken that Sidney Powell was going to unveil was about as real as the, legendary Kraken, the giant sea monster that, never existed. And we have this, it is just kind of fascinating to see her say in a legal document, oh, good heavens, no one possibly could have believed me. No one could have possibly claimed that I was making thought that I was making a statement of fact. This was all a theory, and it was very clear at the time. Actually, it really wasn't clear at the time. People believed her. People believed that she had some sort of secret information, or she had the goods, and all that kind of stuff. And of course, there we are. This is not shocking, but I do think anybody who did buy into Sidney Powell at the time probably should. I sort of say this snarky, but I genuinely mean just take. I used to say, sit in the corner and you think about what you did. Contemplate the error of your ways in quiet contemplation. Just if you did buy into it, it's kind of a glaring lesson into the dangers of seeing what you want to see. and believing what you want to believe and not wanting to acknowledge something that's very painful and frustrating, which is that you're really invested in Donald Trump winning, and that you didn't want to hear anybody saying that he was on his pace to lose, and you didn't want to believe the polls were wrong. And Trump did do better than a whole bunch of the polls. But all in all, that's, that in the end, he did not win, and there was not massive conspiracy to cheat him out of victory. And that's where we are. So, on the one hand, there's a little bit of chuckling over this. On the other hand, it's rather sad that she managed to. So many people, chose to believe her and ended up in this kind of state of alternate reality, a belief in something that was always kind of fantastical and was, never based in what was publicly available, publicly known, and verifiable facts. To say nothing of what was going on in the courtrooms.
The question in my mind, Jim, is this actually going to be an effective defense? I'm guessing she could have gone with, I thought I had trustworthy sources who looked like they were going to deliver the goods. Turns out they didn't. I'm guessing that might not work very well in court, but maybe I was just kidding, has a better chance, although I'm not sure that has a good chance either.
I would say, yeah. This is probably the single most damaging defense you could have. They're all bad defenses, but maybe this one is the worst.
Jim, on that note, have a great day. I'll see you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow, Greg.
Jim Garrity, National Review. I'm Greg Corombos, Radio America. Thanks for being with us today. Please subscribe to the 3 Martini Lunch podcast. Please tell your friends about us as well. Always grateful for those 5-star ratings and your kind reviews. Remember, you can get us on those home devices. All you have to say is play 3 Martini Lunch podcast. Follow us on Twitter. He's at Jim Garrity. I'm at Dateline_DC. Have a great Tuesday, and please join us Wednesday for the next 3 Martini Lunch.
Hi, it's Dana Lash, host of The Dana Show. Every day, I'm here to keep you up to speed on the most important stories and info that you need to know in your very busy life. And if you're always on the go and you want to stay connected, just download our daily podcast and take it with you. It's a great way to get up to speed on what you need to know and what legacy media may not be telling you. Visit danaradio.com and click on the podcast link or subscribe at iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your favorite podcasts.